Hey guys, hope things are going well. I don't know about you, but I am so excited for spring. Just last week, it's hard to believe that we were under a foot of snow in certain areas of our garden, but because of our warm spell that we had last week, all of our snow has melted, so we're starting to see a lot of crocuses and daffodils coming up, which is amazing. I've been going out there quite regularly to see how things are going, and things are slowly inching along. I did take some pictures today just so that way you can see some of the things that are happening in the garden. Not a whole lot yet, just because a lot of our garden was under quite a bit of snow, so it did take a little while for that soil to warm up, but you can see a lot of different things coming up. So we're going to go through some of those pictures, and then after that we're going to do some bloodroot planting, because I realized that one of the bags of bloodroot has started to sprout and even flower. So anyways, let's take a look at some of those pictures. So starting off in our front yard, which is north facing, it took a lot longer for that snow to melt, but that snow was great in terms of insulation and protection, because as you can see, a lot of our leaves from our heuchera and our primrose and even our grape hyacinths from the fall survived that winter nicely there. With our daffodils, you can see some of them sprouting in amongst our periwinkle, and you can also see a kind of pinkish primrose blooming there. It looks a little bit sad just because the leaves didn't survive as well. With our patch of lady's mantle, you can see a little bit of green there. Those are some baby lady's mantle, which is kind of cool. It has self-seeded and has spread a little further from that main patch, and you can also see some daffodils that are growing there. In amongst our hydrangeas, there isn't a whole lot going on. Everything's kind of looking brown and gross. Our lamb's ear is kind of mushy and not looking so great, but hopefully once it gets warmer, a lot of that new growth will come up and I can do some spring cleaning after I know what's alive and what's dead. Moving on towards the side of the house, surprisingly a lot of the snow melted quite quickly, so this area warmed up a lot faster. You can see some daffodils poking up there, as well as our autumn fern. So we have some autumn ferns there that have overwintered, and because they're evergreen, they managed to survive. They do look a little bit fake just because they are kind of a nice bright green still, so they're looking still quite fresh while everything's kind of dead. But it is nice that they survived so well. Even on the other side of the path, those three survived nicely as well. They were buried under, I think, close to 1.5 feet of snow at one point, but it's great to see that they are surviving and doing well. As we move into the backyard, lots of little bulbs are coming up in this area because of our tree stump, which was from our ash tree. There are a lot of roots, so I'm not able to plant a lot of bigger bulbs. So you have a lot of smaller bulbs, such as our grape hyacinths, our Star of Bethlehem. I think I put some crocuses, and there's also some squill in there as well. So those are all sprouting nicely. I think I was looking back at pictures from last year, and this was also one of the first areas that sprouted and flowered for me. As we move through the backyard, that snow cover again managed to protect a lot of these plants. You can see our heuchera, which has survived, and our sedum survived nicely as well, and you can see just some random bulbs popping up. At this point in time, I can't remember what's what, so I'm going to wait for these to grow a little bit bigger before I can figure and tell you what's growing. In amongst the barberry shrubs, not a whole lot going on. It was a very wet area here. A lot of our water pooled into this area, so a little bit soggier. Under our serviceberry bush, I am excited to see that we have some crocuses coming up. I did sprinkle some bone meal in hopes that it will deter the squirrels and also the rabbits. I have some blood meal as well, which I think I'm just going to put down so that way they don't nibble on these crocus leaves like they did last year. And then just continuing along our fence, I have my winter sown native plants here. I did have to tilt and dump out some of the water. So what happened with a lot of the snow, it did weigh down on that plastic dome, and a lot of the water ended up pooling and dripping right into that tray. So I did have to dump some of that water out. And then finally, our last little area where our little wind spinner is, our Shatsa daisies are looking all right. They have that same growth from the fall, from the base, which is great to see. And then our grass, which provided a lot of winter interest. The base, or the I guess the main plant you could say, hasn't sent up any new growth yet, so I'm just leaving those leaves and those stalks up just for some height in the garden because there's not a whole lot going on. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed those pictures of my garden. If you have anything exciting growing in your garden, you'll have to let me know because in the next month we're going to see so much happening and so much change in our garden. It's quite magical. Anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to plant our bloodroot here. So I picked this up, oh boy, I think it was like a week and a half ago or so. And as you can see like a little flower. There's actually 3 flowers in here. So bloodroot is a plant that is native to Ontario. It is a spring flowering plant, and if you know me, I love spring. Tons of spring flowers. If you have them, amazing. So I have had the plan to add a lot of bloodroot. So I only managed to find one that was good at the garden center when I went. When I go to a garden center and I'm looking at Bareroot plants, I am quite the annoying customer because I will look through each bag. So as you're looking at these roots, you do want to make sure that you have, if it says 2, I want to make sure that there are 2 firm rhizomes in here and that they're doing well. So when I was searching through, I did notice that some of them only had 1 good root in there. Some of them I couldn't even feel for anything, so I only managed to pick up this one. But as you can see, it has broken dormancy, so I'm going to plant this up just because I can't leave this sitting in my basement or an unheated garage for any longer, especially with the flowers that are there. So I do have some pots here, 2 pots for our 2 bloodroot, and I also have some soil. This is the same soil as you can see here that I used for my native plant seed sowing. So I'm going to open this up, see how they are, plant these up, and we're going to find somewhere probably in the basement by the window where they can grow for a little bit longer until it gets warmer outside. Our temperatures are still quite chilly, and especially with this adapted to room temperature, I don't think these are good to go outside, and I feel like with the overnight being so cold and below freezing, I might risk damaging these plants. So we're going to have these grow inside for a little bit. Anyways, let's open this up and see how these do. So bloodroot, if you decide to get these, I believe are hardy to zone, I think it's a 3 to 8 is the hardiness for these plants, and you're looking at a height of around, I think this says 20 centimeters in height for this plant. So very beautiful flowers. They kind of remind me of water lilies, which is really pretty to see. All right, so here is our package. You can really see those flowers in there, so I do want to get these out. In the wild, the flowers do come up and it's kind of wrapped with a leaf as it's growing up. I don't know if in this picture these ones are a little bit more mature, but quite pretty. You do find these in shaded areas, so in like wooded areas, along any hiking trails you might be able to see these. So these are great for my garden because I have a lot of shaded areas that I do want plants to grow. So I'm just trying to carefully open this up without damaging these delicate looking flowers. So you can see there, they're blooming already. So I do want to get these potted up so that way they can start developing their root system. So if you take a look here, this is one of our bloodroots right there. So this is a great one. It actually has 2 growth points on here. I'm going to shake off some of this peat moss that it's in so you can see a nice root, and it's feeling firm, which is good. If it's kind of mushy, not a good sign. So this one is looking good. I'm just going to double check that it'll actually fit in this pot. And it is a good size for that pot, so that one is looking good. Let's take a look at our other bloodroot here. This one looks all right as well. It's feeling firm. So as you can see, there's our cute little flower, if I can focus that there for you. And we have our root. There is a strange looking red dot on that, but we'll see what that's about. Some of these leaves do look a little damaged. You can see that black there, so probably pull those off just to be safe. All right, and this one, oh, barely fits in that pot. So I'm going to get some soil into these. So when you're planting Bloodroot, you're looking, I think, around an inch of soil on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put enough so that way I bury this little stem part, so that way our root is under the soil. So I'm going to put some soil in these pots, and then we'll see how these look after. All right, so as you can see, I filled my pot up with our potting soil. Here is our rhizome, and as I was looking at this, you kind of do see that the roots are growing down this way, and I think the rhizome was put upside down, and these flowers ended up growing the wrong way. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to put it down kind of on its side and put some potting soil in it, and then hopefully it'll correct itself by the time I'm ready to put this outside. So I'm just going to fill this up with some potting soil. I might not be able to get it to the right depth, but when I get this out in the garden, I'm going to make sure I adjust for that. So I'm going to pat the soil down around this rhizome here. So that way it's able to start developing those roots and start photosynthesizing, so that way it's able to grow and not use all of that energy that's left in that rhizome, so it's able to self-sustain itself. Alright, so there's that one with our two growing ends. And then we're going to do our next one. So again, here is our rhizome. You can see that our roots do look like they're growing down this way. And there's our little flower right there. So for this one, this rhizome is a lot bigger, and there's really no way for me to fit this in nicely, so I'm going to have this one hanging out just a little bit out of the pot, and then hopefully once it realizes that it's growing the wrong way, it's going to grow straight back up. So let's fill this up with some soil as well. I'm going to pat this down. So again, as you're doing this, make sure you use some pre-moistened soil, so that way you're not trying to make sure that the soil is properly moistened after you're done this process. So I'm just going to press this down. Got to be careful not to break that growing end there. Alright, and there you have it. There is our other bloodroot, growing a little funny there, but we have our two right here. Alright, so there we have our two potted up bloodroot plants there, and it's really hard to focus because it sees my face. So those are potted up. I am excited to see how this does. So buying plants Bareroot is really a cost-effective way at increasing the plants in your garden. Word of caution, just make sure you take a look at those bulbs, those rhizomes, those roots to make sure that those plants are healthy, free from disease, so that way when you bring them home they are good to go. Obviously, you probably don't want to be buying rhizomes that already have plants that are flowering. You want to try to find plants that are in dormancy or barely breaking out of dormancy. So if you manage to find any Bareroot plants that are still dormant, keep those in a cool, dark place until you're ready to plant them, probably after our last frost. And if you see any of your Bareroot plants starting to break out of dormancy, you can plant them up and then after that leave them in an unheated garage or somewhere really cool. For these, because they are growing, I unfortunately can't put these out into the cold because there are tender flowers and leaves, so I'm going to find a cool place in the house where it still has some sun so that way it's able to grow, and then once it warms up outside, hopefully I can get these planted out so that way they can establish out in our garden. Anyways, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing the garden and then seeing these bloodroot plants getting planted up. The weather has warmed up quite a bit, so we're also eager to get gardening. Anyways, until next time, bye!